Okay, 皆さん. The big grammar point that we are going to want to talk about in this new chapter is adjectives. So we're going to get started off talking about the adjectives that we have in Japanese today. We'll take a look at how to use them, what kinds of adjectives we have, and we'll talk more in detail about them in later parts of the chapter. So introducing our adjectives is also going to come along with introducing some of our new vocabulary because the adjectives and the vocabulary are tied very close together. So we're going to talk about our 5th chapter today, a chapter where our main focus is the adjectives. So adjectives, of course, are words that describe nouns. So they tell us more about a noun. Words like tall, or expensive, or interesting, or blue, or friendly are all adjectives. For example, we actually have learned a couple of adjectives already. We didn't talk very much about them, but we did learn them as some of our vocabulary. So let's take a look. Lisa-san wa gakusei desu. Lisa-san wa gakusei desu. Lisa-san is a student. What kind of student is Lisa-san? Lisa-san wa ii gakusei desu. Ii gakusei desu. A good student. Ii gakusei. So we learned the word ii, which means good. We also have この時計は What do you think, 皆さん? 高いです。この時計は高いです。This watch is expensive. とんかつは What do you think? とんかつは美味しいです。とんかつ is delicious. 美味しいです。So these are the adjectives we have talked about already. We're also going to introduce a bunch of new adjectives in this chapter. When we get into adjectives, there are 2 main types of adjective in Japanese. These types of adjectives tell us what the adjectives will end with, and as we get into more details about adjectives next week, you will see it changes the way that they conjugate in grammar. So for right now, we're just going to focus on learning the adjectives and getting to know what kind they are. So let's take a look. This is our first group of adjectives, the E adjectives. You might be able to guess from the name, E adjectives are adjectives that end with E. That's right, they all end with the hiragana E. So let's take a look. Try and repeat the new adjectives out loud after I say them. Number 1, 高い. 高い. Number 2, いい. いい. Number 3, おいしい。おいしい。Number 4, 新しい。新しい。Number 5, 暑い。暑い。Number 6, 忙しい。忙しい。Number 7, 大きい。大きい。Number 8, 面白い。面白い。Number 9, 怖い。 怖い。Number 10, 寒い。寒い。Number 11, 楽しい。楽しい。Number 12, 小さい。小さい。Number 13, つまらない。つまらない。Number 14, 古い。古い。Number 15, 難しい。難しい。Number 16, 優しい。優しい。And number 17, 安い。安い。So this is our main group of E adjectives. We also will introduce the na adjectives. You can maybe guess why they're called na adjectives. That's right, they all end with na. So these will have a na at the end. Let's take a look at what we have. Our first one is 嫌いな。嫌いな。Now you may notice, of course, we have words like and dislike in English. In English, like and dislike are verbs. I like something. I don't like something. In Japanese, we have to be a little bit careful because they're adjectives. We'll talk more about that as we get a little bit further into the chapter. Our next is きれいな。きれいな。Make sure that when you pronounce them, you can tell the difference between 嫌い and きれい。嫌い、きれい。Next we have 元気な。元気な。Followed by 静かな。静かな。Next is 好きな。好きな。And 大好きな。大好きな。We also have にぎやかな。にぎやかな。And 暇な。暇な。So that is our main set of na adjectives. So let's take a look at these adjectives in a little bit more detail. So first of all, we have some adjectives in this chapter that are pairs of opposites. For example, 大きい and 小さい。大きい、小さい。This is pretty easy to understand, right? 大きい is large, 小さい is small. Make sure that you don't forget the long vowels in 大きい。Next we have 新しい and 古い。So 新しい is new and 古い is old. Let's be careful though. 古い, we don't use to talk about like the age of a person or animal. So it is the opposite of new and not the opposite of young. So an object can be 古い, but a person is not really 古い. Next is 面白い and つまらない。面白い、つまらない。So 面白い means something is interesting or funny. つまらない, it's not interesting or not funny. Next we have 難しい and 優しい. 難しい is difficult, and 優しい, easy. Our next pair is 静かな, 賑やかな, two not adjectives. So 静かな means quiet or peaceful. It always helps me to remember that 静かなis kind of like when you want someone to be quiet and you tell them shh, shh. 静かな also has that shh sound at the beginning. 賑やかな means like a place is bustling with a lot of people. So we can think of like Tokyo or like New York City are places that are very 賑やか. 賑やかな人, so when we're talking about a person, is somebody who is like maybe very talkative, very lively. It might be kind of a way to say that a person is kind of a loud person in like a nice way. 賑やかな has like a very positive connotation. Our next pair is 暑い and 寒い. 暑い, 寒い. We use these to talk about hot or cold. Generally, 暑い and 寒い we use for the weather, or like a room, the air in the room feels cold. So it's about how like the temperature is like in a room or in a space, not about like whether an object is hot or cold. So we use a completely different word for when like an object is cold or a drink is cold. So that's just one thing we have to keep in mind. Next we have 忙しい and 暇な. 忙しい, 暇な. 忙しい means busy. 暇な, we don't have an exact word for this in English, but 暇な means that you don't have anything to do. It's the opposite of busy. So you have a lot of free time, there's nothing in your schedule, you can just do whatever because you don't have anything to do. The next one, we have a word that we are already familiar with, 高い, and we have 安い, so expensive and cheap. 高い, 安い. The rest of our adjectives are adjectives that we introduce just by themselves, so we don't have a pair of opposites for them. Our first one is the 暑い we use for objects. So it's the same pronunciation, and both of them mean hot. Just so you know, kind of for the future, we use a different kanji for this 暑い and the other 暑い that we talked about before. Next is Genkina. Genkina has a couple of potential meanings. It can mean that you are healthy or cheerful, you're in good spirits. If we're using it to talk about, like, say, an older person, we might say they're still very spry. Those could all be Genkina. So you may remember this word because it is the word that we use in the title of our textbook, right? Genki, Genkina. Next is Tanoshii. Tanoshii means something is fun. We also have 綺麗な. 綺麗な means something is pretty, or that a place is clean or neat. 綺麗な. Next is 優しい. 優しい, when we use it for a person, means that the person is kind or gentle. So we have two possible meanings for 優しい, easy or kind, depending on the context. Our next word is 怖い. 怖い. This is an easy word to understand. We just want to be careful when we're pronouncing it. So this ko, it really is an O sound. Ko-wai. I think some native speakers of English have a little bit of trouble because they tend to turn all of the vowels into a similar sound and will say like kowai. But if you say kawaii, I'm not sure if you're saying kowai, which means scary, or kawaii, which means cute. So make sure that you have the o when you are speaking, when you say this word. Kowai. Our last one we have is kakui. Kakui. Kakui means that someone is good looking. So some of you, I think, who have studied Japanese on your own may have seen this word before translated as cool, but kakui is not really about cool so much as it is about like how something looks. So we use kakui to say someone is good looking, especially like a boy or a man. And we can use it maybe to talk about something, an action somebody does being kakui. But we don't really use it to talk about a situation. Like in English, I might say like, oh, I got a really good scholarship. And my friend might say, oh, that's so cool. Good for you. We can call it cool in English, but we can't call it kakui in Japanese. Kakui is really mostly about how something looks. So let's take a minute to review the new adjectives that we learned. You can pause the video if you want. Check and see if you can remember the meanings of some of these new words. Okay, let's check them together. We have takai, ii, oishii, atarashii, atsui, isogashii, ookii, 面白い 怖い 寒い 楽しい 小さい つまらない and 古い 難しい 優しい 安い How about our not adjectives? We have 嫌いな、綺麗な、元気な、静かな、好きな、大好きな、賑やかな、暇な。Okay, let's take a minute. You can pause if you want. See if you can pair together these adjectives with one of the nouns that we have studied before. So first the adjective, then the noun. Alright, let's check together. 1番 きれいな公園 2番 大きいカバン 3番 いい学生 4番 元気な子供 5番 怖い映画 6番 安い野菜 So, all we have to do to put an adjective together with a noun is to take the adjective and put a noun after it. How about this? We have Atarasi jitensha. Now we can take this description of the noun and use it in the same way we'd use a noun in any other sentence. So, Atarasi jitensha o kaimashita. I bought a new bike. Or, きれいな海で泳ぎました. I swam in a beautiful ocean. So, that's all you need to know for now about how adjectives work together with nouns. See if you can do a little practice, and then next week we'll start talking about how we can change and use the adjectives in more complicated ways.